Hi, and welcome to another episode of Finding Out Who I Am Through the Eyes of a White Woman. I'm reading a book called With the Prehistoric People, the Kikuyu of British East Africa. Now, I'm on a journey to find out who I am. Who am I? Who are my tribe? Who are my people? Because information is in Africa, and the history that we learn is very British, is very whitewashed. So, and this is on purpose, so that if you look at the history of slave trade and colonialism, their intention is to wipe out native cultures. So young people don't learn about their history, they don't learn about who they are. So in history, we're taught about Winston Churchill, the First World War, the Second World War. And even when we talk about slavery, we are not really taught exactly what that was. Now, I'm finding out a great deal about my tribe, the Agikoyo people. So if you watch previous episodes, you will see that I started right at the beginning of the book, and slowly I'm finding out. And it's interesting. The section right here is talking about warfare, and it's talking about who the Agikoyo were in terms of warfare. And I mean, so many little gems here, so many little gems. So it appears, and they seem to be comparing the Maasai and the Agikoyo, I suppose, by proximity, they were the closest and they had a lot of interactions. But it's interesting, they make a distinction between the way the Maasai fought and the way the Agikoyo fought. This is what they say. Now, the Maasai are, however, on their own. Lions are a race of fighters, and between the herds feeding in their thousands, the Maasai on the Maasai plains and our Agikoyo, who would have given their lives to possess them, ever stood long gaunt owners whose ordered charge, shoulder to shoulder, with their double line of waving plumes and flashing spears, was the irresistible stampede of their cattle. So they approach their enemies in a formation, and they're bearing their spears. Their spears are very shiny, and they've got this incredible plumage, and there's thousands of them, and they're all in a line. And so their tactic is to charge, and this is why they were renowned, especially by the British. And the British actually very quickly realized that they can use the Maasai to suppress the Agikoyo. And so they have used the Maasai right from the start of the arrival in order to use them as soldiers, effectively, to turn them against the Agikoyo, because in that episode I said that the Agikoyo and the Maasai were frenemies, and the British very quickly recognizes this schism between both of them, and they start to use the Maasai, because the Maasai have an advantage in that they're very battle hardened, and they use this tactic as a formation. Now, this is also what they say about the Agikoyo. The Agikoyo have conceived a great admiration for the fashion in war of these redoubtable adversaries, and they are inclined to copy their arms and encroachments. Some of this language is just, old-fashioned writing. So what they're saying is that the Gikuyu seem to copy the Maasai, and I don't know who copied who. How do they have proof that the Gikuyu are the ones who are copying the Maasai, or do they find similar traits? Because what she's saying is that the Kikuyu warrior dresses his hair in a Maasai fashion, in a pigtail, and they wear the Maasai mask. And also they talk about the Gikuyu wearing the ostrich plumes, which they have patches basically. So I don't know who has copied who, but the Gikuyu seem to appear similar to the Maasai in terms of their dressage for warfare. So they have twists. So they have like dreadlocks really, but they have twisted their hair, and they have a ponytail, and they have a few bits to the front. And they wear masks, and these masks have plumes on them, ostrich plumage on them. But that's as far as when it comes to the similarity between the Gikuyu and them. But this is what she says. But he has no idea of military organization, drill, and obedience when it comes to real fighting. Makes a miserable display until he reverts to his old tactics. Okay, that's quite rude. But yes, of course, the Gikuyu do not have the same formations as the Maasai, because the Maasai, when they're fighting, they have these long lines, and it's intimidated when thousands of people are charging at you with shiny spears and their huge plumages. It's obviously quite intimidating. And it's true, the Gikuyu don't do that. But what the Gikuyu are very, very good at is planning. They are very good at tactics, booby trapping. Now that is their territory, and they know their territory very, very well. And this is why they obviously very different. The Maasai have to fight like this because they originally lived in the plains, whereas the Gikuyu lived deep in the hills, and therefore that is their shelter. And therefore, I would imagine by default they have realized that it's easier to repel people and keep people out rather than fight and waste all those valuable men. And this is also what Catherine and Scoresby say. The English, as has been said, availed themselves of the Maasai in the subjugation of the Gikuyu. So this is it. The British succeeded greatly by managing to use Africans to turn on other Africans. So they used the Maasai in order to subjugate the Gikuyu. But what's interesting is that, so she talks about a time where the generation of Iregi, of the Gikuyu, basically the Somalis moved down and they want to settle in the area around the mountain, Mount Kenya, Kirinyaga. And the Somalis moved down and they want to settle down. And this is where something incredible happens. So we see the Gikuyu, the Maasai, the Dorobo, and the Akamba working together to repel these invaders. I wish they had done the same with the British. Anyway, fine, that's what happened. We cannot take time back. But at this time, they worked together as Africans. Actually, I suppose Somali were Africans, but these are new to the area, and they have worked really well in order to repel these invaders. Now, there's again great information about slave trade right on here. And I'm going to read it, and bearing in mind, I apologize because some of the language, the way it's used, I suppose this is the way they used to write in those days. So she talks a great deal here about the route that the slavers took, because it seemed like they would go inland. They would not touch the people of East Africa, so they seem to go deep into the Congo and all of those, but they're not touching the people around the coast, which is interesting. They're not touching the Gikuyu, I suppose it's catch-22, because the Gikuyu, their defense is very, very good. So slave traders, they don't want to waste their time fighting. They just use cheap tactics to raid villages. They don't go to the Maasai, because we've already talked about just how fierce the Maasai are. And they don't seem to really take slaves from East Africa, as far as I can see. But the Gikuyu did not, I'll say this again, the Gikuyu did not, to any appreciable extent, come to contact with a civilization of any form. Why are you dissing us, man? What is the definition of civilization? We were pretty civilized, I say. What is the definition of civilization? They were not entirely cut off from intercourse with the coast. Now, intercourse, I'm taking to mean liaisons, okay? But it affected them little. The great route for slaves and ivory, which ran between the Great Lake. So the only Great Lake I can think about is Nyanza, Lake Nyanza, which the British named Victoria. That's the only Great Lake that I can think of. So the great route for slaves and ivory, which ran between the Great Lake and the sea, the Uganda Road. This is what they called it, the Uganda Road, which also became the route for the Uganda Railway, for the Kenya-Uganda Railway. So the Uganda Road just touched its borders on the south western side. And at that point, which now forms the station on the Uganda Railway named Kikuyu. My God, That's literally where I went to school. Holy cow. Now, I went to school in Kikuyu. My God. So this was the root of slave traders. Man, that's literally where I went to school. So here, which now forms a station on the Uganda Railway named Kikuyu. The caravans from the coast used to stop to refit and lay fresh supplies of grain. Wow. The very place that formed my formative years is where people stolen from their homes, from their lives, that's where they stopped to buy supplies. You know, I felt like this when I went to Zanzibar, because I went to Zanzibar to a place called the Whipping Post, and that really triggered me so badly. And I'll stop this for just a minute, because the Whipping Post is basically where, on the market day, when the Europeans were selecting their slaves, they would tie the slaves onto a post and they would whip them. The ones that cried were thrown into a pit for the next market day. The ones didn't cry were loaded into boats because they were strong to go and work for Europeans. And I just as triggered reading this. I didn't know that the very place where I went to school was where the caravans with slaves stopped to refit and lay fresh supplies of grains. So the Arab slave raiders never seem to have thought it politic to interfere with the Kikuyu. It suited their purpose better to maintain friendly relations with those living in that part in order to make sure of getting the absolutely essential food supplies. The Maasai, however, were far more in touch with passing caravans, and in desultory fashion, simple articles of commerce such as trade, salt, and brass and copperware procured by them as honga. Honga is like a fee for passing through. So, on the southern border, the Akamba, who were, from their situation, more in communication with the coast, similarly carried on limited commercial intercourse. The Kikuyu had practically nothing but vegetable produce to sell except a little ivory. Slavery as an institution did not exist amongst them, nor did they make raids for capture of slaves. Thank God. I'm happy to hear this, that the Kikuyu did not participate in this horrible, horrible trade of man, this is emotional. Guys, let's find out together. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and turn on your notifications so that you can find out as much information as possible. And take care for now. Bye.